page, we get asked all the time, how can I find out more information and know which products are part of your ACC programs? Because we do have two of them. We have the Moneymaker program and we have the Admin Pack. The Moneymaker is more geared towards utilities and tools and add-ons that you would be installing on your clients' machines. The ACC Admin Pack is more tools that you install on your machine and you use at your office. So from the Add-ons tab here at designer1.com, if you click on that, it's going to give you a list of kind of most of our add-ons in a grid view. If you choose a subcategory of consultant tools, this takes you to what we focus on with our ACC friends. And here we see the ACC Admin Pack. So the cost for this is $499.95 for your first year, and then each subsequent year it's $249.95 for your renewal. And it includes the following tools you see here. There's 14 of them right now, and we're constantly adding and tweaking the existing tools, and we're really excited about this particular offering. We think it helps ACT consultants be more effective, have more expertise, not necessarily have to rely on SwiftPage for support, you know, resetting passwords, restoring databases. There's some pretty powerful tools here. And today we're going to be specifically talking about DR1 Importer. And I'm going to hand the controls over to Greg Ferber. Greg is our programming genius. He's out of Oregon, and he's going to show off some of the tools and some of the abilities that DR1 Importer has. And I'm going to go ahead and make him the presenter and welcome him onto the call. Go ahead and take it away, Greg.
Well, thanks everybody for joining the meeting today. And like Mark said, we're going to review DR1 Importer. So I might as well just kind of jump right in here. You can see I'm on a Windows 8 machine. I have ACT version 16, 2014, whatever you want to call it. And so I'll just get it fired up here. And in the meantime, I am in my ACC Admin Pack folder. Nothing real fancy here so far, just launch DR1 Importer. Just like you guys, I get prompted for my credentials, so enter that information. Assuming I can type my password correctly. There we go. All right, we're in. So I tried to make DR1 Importer as sort of logical flow as possible. The tabs are kind of in the order that you're going to do things. So we start off, we're on the first tab. We got to select our ACT database. Obviously, we got to get logged in before we can do anything. Kind of sense. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Pretty quick and simple there. Nothing too fancy. Head on over to primary entities. Primary entities are the companies, contacts, groups. Group contacts kind of goes in the same place, and users. You could call opportunities a primary entity nowadays, whatever. That's on secondary entities right now. But the way that DR1 Importer works is you can select different sources for all of these, and obviously then you're going to map the information in. So let's go ahead and just kind of get started with that. Taking a look at contacts, hit browse. First thing you see, it's going to prompt you for whether you are going after a database and spreadsheet file or a SQL Server. Database and spreadsheet files includes like Excel files. Access still kind of qualifies as a database, but it's a flat file, or not a flat file, but it's a file. SQL Server is obviously a SQL. So depending on which type of source of data you want to bind to, say OK on database and spreadsheet files, and you can see I have testimport.xls. Might as well open that up so that you guys can see what I did in there. Office 2013. All right. So, for example, I have a contacts tab, and real simple, just kind of laid it out: contact, company, phone, email, so on and so forth. A simple companies tab and an example history. I added Mark, Reiner, and myself to it just so that we had something that we could import that's not in the demo database. So nothing fancy here, but it kind of works for illustrative purposes. I will close that because otherwise the file is in use and it complains. So, test import. Hit open. It's going to ask me which table or spreadsheet in the case of Excel that we want to read stuff from. We're doing contacts, so I just select my contact table and hit OK. And you can see it says contacts, 3 records. So I already know that I'm mapping stuff from the contacts table. This is whatever table I selected, and that there's 3 records in there. Obviously, next step, we want to go ahead and map that information in. And you can see that DR1 Importer automatically lines up things with equal field names. So address 1 to address 1, address 2 to address 2. But I didn't have a dash in email here, so it didn't auto map it. I got to hit my drop down, choose email, zip code. I hit my drop down, choose zip code. Another handy thing here is this field usage column. I don't know about you, but I do a lot of conversions from whatever system to ACT, and I find that anybody that has more than maybe 120, 150 fields, the vast majority of those databases that have tons and tons of fields in them have nothing in almost any of those. So this field usage column just tells me, hey, there are X records in the file that actually have data in this. It can be really handy for getting rid of those things that somebody thought was a great idea to add to their database 4 years ago and never got touched. Field usage is 1 out of 40,000. Well, who cares about that? So just kind of a handy little thing there. And in addition, I'm going to actually go ahead and say that, let's say this phone number that I have here isn't actually just phone in the ACT database. It's not my business phone. It's my alternate to phone, let's just say. DR1 Importer makes it really easy to actually add a new field when you're doing the mapping. So instead of having to log into ACT and go to define fields and all that annoying stuff, you can just come in and say add new field. I want to name it Alt2 and make it a phone. So what ACT will do, if you're familiar with ACT's process, it'll call it Alt2 phone and Alt2 phone extension. And we'll just say OK. And now in my field list here, I have Alt2 phone. Now it hasn't added the field to the database yet, but it's kind of queued it up to be added so we can select it in the map. This gets really handy for anybody that's got kind of a customized source. Instead of having to bounce back and forth between whatever you're mapping and ACT and relaunching to refresh the fields and everything, you can just instantly say, hey, I want to add a field, and then map it through. Select ID field here is kind of a unique little thing that DR1 Importer does. It's asking you what is the unique identifier for these import records, mostly to make sure that you've mapped that in somewhere so that if you need to do updates, let's say you mismapped something, as long as you've imported your ID field, you can then go back and do merges and have it update column information. So we're just going to say that contact is our ID field. And like most import programs, you can save a map. So you can save this field map here, call it contacts. Come back and load that later if we want to. I'm going to say OK. Now we've mapped our information. Come back and go over to secondary entities. We have notes, histories, activities, opportunities, secondary contacts, your standard stuff. I actually do have a history in that or test file that I created. So let's actually go ahead and do something a little more advanced since it is a deep dive. I had a company record and a history record there on their own. So I'm going to map companies. Only had one company. Just do that real quick. And then I also had a history. Map fields. Actually, that doesn't matter. Okay. All right. So next question that people have is, well, how do I relate those contacts to the companies and the histories to where they need to go? This is where all of that is defined. The Table Links and Options tab. A lot going on here. So we'll start with something easy. Contacts to companies. Specify the linking fields. Well, I'm going to say company has to be equal to company. Nothing too fancy there. Nice and simple, and it tells you link set. So you know when you're looking at this dialog later, okay, yes, I have told it how to get my contacts associated with their companies. Histories to contacts. You can actually come in here and say histories to companies, contacts, groups, opportunities in certain circumstances will show up in this dropdown. That's actually something I apparently need to fix for version 16 because opportunities should be in this dropdown list, but it's not seeing it. So histories to contact, specify linking fields, contact equal to contact, pretty simple. But you can have multiple fields in here. You can see this add button down the bottom left. So if I didn't have a field that was a guaranteed 100% link, then you can say, well, contact, company, and phone, for example, are my linking fields. to get histories over to the contact record. So depending on what you're converting from or what kind of data you're importing, that can actually be pretty handy to say that multiple fields are the unique identifier. And then one sort of special feature of Designer or DR1 Importer that I haven't seen in other systems is this history type mapping option here. So instead of having to make sure that your import file has valid values for what your destination database is, we can come in here to history type mapping and say, it will look at your source file and figure out what all the different types of histories are, and then give you the opportunity to map them through. I just happened to create a meeting held in my source database, but I could hypothetically map that to any of the history types that exist in my ACT database on meeting right one. But if your source file, for example, just happens to have numbers, I don't know a lot of systems where history type 1 corresponds to something and history type 2 corresponds to something. You can actually map those through the ACT history type, so you on there. Say OK. A couple other things you can do on this dialog, for example, don't dedupe companies. It will dedupe companies on company name by default, but newer versions of ACT don't require that companies have unique names. Tell it not to do that. You can tell it to actually create companies from your contacts file. So you're importing contacts, you want it to create companies as it's going, have it do that. Set the company link when blank, so you can actually have it link contacts to those companies that you're importing if you need to. Apply proper case. If your file happens to be in all uppercase or all lowercase or some messed up format, apply proper case will attempt to make it look nice. And then create links for attachments. If you're importing notes or histories or something that supports attachments, you can tell it instead of copying the files into the database, just to create links. It's similar to the ACT feature for when creating a history to create a link there. Head on down to the Progress tab, and you can see it gives us a bunch of status information about what is going on. Nothing right now. And then something that's an exclusive to DR1 Importer, the Show Pre-Import Report. So what this does, it takes a look at what you've done, what you've mapped, what you've told it to create. You can see it tells me that we're going to create this Alt2 phone field. And then it also looks at what you've told it to import and looks for potential problems. So for example, if you didn't map the ID column in, potential problems would tell you, hey, you didn't map the ID column in, so you might want to do that in case you need to make any changes a run 2 or run 3. Or if you've mapped something that has 100 characters in a field in your source database to a field that in ACT only stores 50 characters, it will identify that and say, you've mapped something that's longer than the field can store, you might want to either field size in ACT or create your own field to store this. Things like that. So potential problems can be really kind of handy to look at before you hit go, because you can solve some of these things and then go ahead and move forward with your close that. I can also do save import settings here. So this saves everything that I've told DR1 Importer to do. It saves my ACT database, what the login is, all of my data sources, all of my mappings, all of my options, all of my table links, everything. So if you've got an import that you do on a regular basis, or you're just having some data issues and certain records aren't coming in and you need to clean them up and then you redo the import a couple times, Save Import Settings saves you all of that time remapping, relinking, relogging into everything. So very convenient. I'm just going to go ahead and hit Start because we have something pretty simple going on here. Oh, close that. Debug build. So you can see we're creating new contact fields here. This is creating our Alt2 phone. All right, here's something that I was hoping would come up. Some rows were not successfully imported. Would you like to review the failed data? So if something doesn't get imported into the database correctly, DR1 Importer will actually pop up and say, hey, we had a problem doing X. Let's say yes. What were we complaining about? All right, so we didn't like importing the meeting for one reason or another, and it didn't actually give us an error message. That's kind of annoying, but at least we know, we tried to import this meeting and something went wrong with it, so we can go back and take a look at it and see, okay, what's going on? Why didn't you want to do that? Close. But let's go ahead and see if we did a few other things correctly. Company. All right. So there's me, Mark, and Reiner. You can see that those all got brought in. I didn't check the link to companies option, so we're just kind of white right now. But if I hit my little button, yep, there's a Designer One software company, so that got brought in correctly. So, you know, relatively straightforward on that front, how it works. Let's take a look and see if we can figure out why this history didn't go. So we'll say done, and then relaunch DR1 Importer to sort of remap everything. That was actually done as a design decision because otherwise ACT is kind of in this funky state where you've already imported a bunch of stuff, and it's just better to completely shut it down and relaunch. Re-enter my credentials. All right. 14 demo. I wonder if I hit cancel on the type mapping dialog or something. Test import. Histories. Okay. Yeah, this is regarding start date. Contact. Did I miss anything important? Oh, I don't have an end date. Start date to end date. That might be important. Okay. And then table links and options. Again, we got to go to our history type mapping. Meeting held to meeting held. Histories to contacts. Link contact to contact. Good. And that's another thing to mention. Contact to contact. This linking fields thing, when I am importing data, it will show different linking fields than when I am, or sorry, not when I'm importing data. When I'm importing contacts along with my histories, it will show me linking fields from my source file. When I am just doing histories by themselves, it will show me linking fields from the ACT database. So it kind of assumes that if you're doing histories along with contacts, that you're going to want to relate those files instead of saying, I want to relate my histories that I'm importing to the current content of the ACT database. So we're good there. Histories contacts, history type mapping. See if that works a little better. Hey, there we go. And no warning about records not created. So it was just that I missed that end date there. Can't have a history that doesn't end. And a little view refresh here. And go to my histories. There's my meeting held from 10/1/2013. So relatively straightforward. All right. So other things we can do with DR1 Importer. Let's go back and take a peek here. Let's do a little configuration. Get logged in. So a couple other fun things we can do. Users, for example. See if I can get a list out of ACT. Go up, advanced users. That long. Export to Excel. And save as. This took me a little while to figure out this dialog. Too many things that are designed for touch and not enough things designed for a mouse. Okay, database and spreadsheet files. Close Excel. And users. Fine. Map fields. All right, so when we come in here to map fields on users, one thing you'll note is that it actually asks you for the user ID and the My Record ID. So if you are using, say, the ACT reporting views and you can see who the user IDs and My Record IDs are, DR1 Importer will actually let you create users that have the same user ID as another copy of ACT. So why you might care about that is you could use DR1 Importer to bring the users over from another system, maintain those user IDs, and then use ACT itself to do an export and all of the record managers. You can also specify the password when you're bringing in users. So again, just a little kind of convenience thing there if you're converting from another system. And the My Record ID, might have guessed, lets you actually specify this is the contact ID of the My Record, again, for maintaining things like record managers, whatnot in the system. And DR1 Importer will go in through the back end and make sure that these IDs are maintained. Kind of a little hidden feature that not everybody knows about on the user side of things. Take a look at pick lists on the Other Entities tab. You can import pick list information, so just a little convenience thing again. If there's anything else warrants mentioning, otherwise we will take questions. I think we're ready for questions.
Yeah, so if you'd like to ask a question, please use the questions interface inside of GoToMeeting. You can ask us a question and we will respond to it. And Greg, you want to go ahead and take some of those and we'll answer them here real quick?
Yep. Just taking a look here. Questions dialog. Since I'm in a VM right now, it's a little small. There we go. Since the new version of ACT doesn't require unique names for companies, if we create companies on import and the name is already in the database, will a new company be made? Yes, if you set the option. So I'll come over here. The option specifically for creating companies even when they have the same name is this don't dedupe companies option right here. Next question. Client accidentally deleted 200 contact records, restored a backup, looked up the 200 contact records needed, put into a separate database. Can an importer import those 200 records into the main database? DR1 Importer, the ACT reading functionality is something that I'm still developing, just because ACT itself is kind of special. It has a lot of things that need to be considered. So DR1 Importer wouldn't be the thing to use for that, David. I would actually use ACT to ACT. You have those 200 contacts in a different database. ACT to ACT should be able to bring everything back into the main database, including the notes and histories and activities and that.
And ACT to ACT is another tool that you get as part of the ACC admin pack. It's kind of a DR1 importer specifically for other ACT databases. We don't give you, the end user, as much power to manipulate the actual import routine, but nonetheless, it's still a very powerful tool that can fix that exact problem that you just mentioned, David.
Yeah, ACT to ACT is actually designed to kind of recover from, for example, an orphaned remote database, or you've got some damage in your database that doesn't let you do a save copy as, things of that nature. You can create a brand new database, tell ACT to ACT to bring over all the fields, bring over all the users, everything. And it also maintains the record managers and makes sure that everything maps through correctly. So definitely a useful tool.
A legitimate use case for ACT to ACT right now, for those of you that have customers that have updated to V16 and have experienced the missing contacts, not syncing back and forth because of the new little feature they have of auto-linking contacts to companies. If you have that problem, you can use ACT to ACT to resolve that issue. All right, any other questions? Oh, yeah, Danielle's pointing out that we don't fix the bug, Danielle, but we can clean up the data. So you still have to wait for SwiftPage to release a hotfix. But if you want to clean up the databases to get all the contacts where they need to be and then change that setting down to 0, we can at least clean it up and get you back to square one and wait for SwiftPage to give us a hotfix. So any other questions regarding DR1 Importer? It's mainly, we use it all the time for doing conversions. If you come to us and say, hey, Designer One, I have a Salesforce.com database or a Microsoft CRM database or a SugarCRM database, and we want you to convert it to ACT for us, we use DR1 Importer to do those conversions. Well, we'll give you guys another 30 seconds to type a question. If not, we'll be wrapping things up. I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance today. We really appreciate your guys' help and support. If you guys didn't like the products and didn't buy them, we wouldn't do the webinars and we wouldn't continue to develop them. But you guys are great to work with, and we consider you partners, not just customers. So we will continue our webinar series probably about every 2 weeks or so. we will have a webinar going over one of our products or maybe two of our products. And stay tuned for emails. We will be uploading this particular webinar to our YouTube channel so that if you want to review it, you'll be able to. And again, we'd like to thank everybody for their attendance today. And you guys have a great day and hope